Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm 24 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I am shunned.
All right, Lexi. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I grew up in it, but that was only on my mom's side. And on my dad's side, he was never a witness
Mm.
because they were never married. So I was always going back and forth between being a witness and not being a witness.
Oh, so you kind of had two worlds present.
hmm
And your parents were together or were they separate?
They were together for a while. And then by the time I think I was like two, that's when they separated. And that's when my mom was more into the being a witness.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Seems like it usually happens that way. Something happens and people kind of dive in deeper, right?
hmm Absolutely. It
Was your
was
mom a did the witness stuff go back very far for her?
It did, but she also was not very in it because she got in it to in her mid-teens, so she was kind of like I think she was about in high school when her family started to be in it. So that was kind of rough age, being in high school and then trying to be a witness.
Yeah, that'd be real tough.
Yeah.
She tell those stories very often.
No, I don't really know anything about her past. The more the stories that I hear about her being in a witness and out of a witness was mostly from her sister, which is my aunt. But my mom doesn't talk about it at all.
Hmm. It's interesting. Actually, I think I would imagine a lot of people would probably say that they don't really know their parents' backstory greatly in the witnesses. Seems like people don't really talk about it a lot. It's kind of
hmm
common.
Yeah, the more that I think about it, I think about how, um, when I made mistakes like she did, she doesn't mention it to me like she made a mistake. She wanted to be more of like I was always that perfect witness. You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
hmm
Um, so what about so you then are kind of born into this thing, it sounds like at the age of two. It gets a little more serious. I mean, for your mom at least.
hmm Um, it was kind of hard just because we always had, you know, when I when we came out, I had my stepdad. She found a new guy and we had him, but he was a drug addict. So we had to juggle being a drug addict at home and a witness in the hall. So that was kind of another thing that I had to juggle when I was younger, because we never talked about it. At the Kingdom Hall, we were always the perfect witnesses. We went out in service, we commented at meeting, but then at home, it was my stepdad was on drugs.
Was your stepdad a witness
He was, yeah,
in good
but he hid
standing?
it at home. hmm Most of the time he
Wow.
was, yeah.
Oh, wow. So you were then presenting at the Kingdom Hall as this, perfect little JW family, like a lot of people do. But then home was a little bit of a different story. Was he struggling with prescription drugs or something else?
Um, I think for the most part it was prescription drugs. I don't know if he messed with anything else outside the home or behind closed doors, but yeah, he used to raid people's medicine closets all the time.
Mm, it's really sad. Um, so I mean, first of all, this all has to be confusing for you because you're just a little kid with a mom who's a witness, a dad who's not, and now you have stepdad is a drug addict, and you're going to the meetings and seeing one side and then coming home and seeing another side. So you're living a lot of different lives as a little bitty
Yeah.
kid.
hmm It was really hard, especially, Robbie would always tell me, we don't talk about this, or when we're at the hall, we have to be quiet. You know what I mean? We don't ever talk about what happens at home.
Gotcha. So then I guess let's go ahead and talk about a little bit what was the worldview that you were developing as that little kid, seeing all these different things, and then the religion is teaching you certain things. You know, were you just confused? Did you have any particular view of, the people around you in this world?
Um, yes and no. I think being little, because when I would visit my real dad, we would spend our time at Disneyland.
Hmm.
So that kind of made my brain shut off when I would go to Disneyland because I was so happy and everything was so magical. But then when I would be at the hall, I had a lot of kids my age, so that kind of helped not having to think about it. And also, as I grew up in this hall, I stayed with that same group of people. So everyone in that hall see me grow up. So that kind of helped in a different way because people would talk to me and my mind would never go to what Robbie was doing. So I never really thought about it until I got home because I was always distracted.
Oh, wow. So you kind of had a little bit of an escape at the Kingdom Hall with your
Mhm,
friends. You had an escape with Disney Dad, it sounds like. I'm sure that was a good time. And then, but it was the home life that where it really got very real. So I
mhm.
guess what was home like for you? What was the temperature of the room, so to speak? How was it just you? Do you have any siblings? Like, what was life like for you guys?
Um, it was me for a little bit, and then my mom had my 2 younger brothers. Um, my stepdad couldn't handle a job very long because of the drugs. So my mom would always be working either really late jobs or she would be juggling 2 jobs. So a lot of the time it was just me and my brothers home alone with my stepdad.
Oh, wow. Oh, so you all were left with him. So then I guess what was that like? I mean, was he active in his addiction when you guys were home, or was he kind of trying to hide it at all?
No, he never tried to hide it. It was always active. I remember getting ready for school and he would be stumbling down the hall or, um, he with me because I wasn't his. He got pretty much physically abusive a lot of the times towards me, not towards my brothers. They were just at home life. I was more hidden because I was scared to be slapped in the face or getting kicked or punched. So I was very much isolated unless me and my brothers were outside.
Okay. Um, did did the I guess I'm trying to ask, where did the witness part come in at home? Were you all um were you getting spanked or hit or whatever? Like, it's all hitting. Were you getting hits because of things to do with activity at the hall, or you didn't answer, or a comment at a meeting or something? Were there like expectations there that were making it worse, or was it primarily just because he was out of control?
Um, it was more because he was out of control or because he felt like he needed to hit someone. But as I grew older, a lot of people had told me that um, Robbie didn't like girls. He didn't like me because I was a girl, or he didn't like me because I was not his child physically. Um, so seeing that, I kind of see that people in the hall were recognizing that, but he kind of brushed it off until we got home. But I never thought about that until someone had mentioned it to me.
Okay, so your siblings maybe then were treated differently?
Oh yeah, they were treated, which um, makes me happy because I didn't want them to go through it. A lot of the times at night when my mom would be working and he would be hyped, hyped up on drugs, I would make sure their door was shut or locked at night just in case he did feel like hitting someone else. But I always made sure that his attention was on me and not my brothers.
Ooh, so put in quite a position as a kid. I don't
Mhm.
know how old we're talking here, 8, 10, when all of this started, but uh that really puts you in a tough position, and one where again you're taught to sacrifice yourself, right? Like just like Jehovah's Witnesses teach us to sacrifice ourselves for everything inside the cult, we're also, it sounds like you were being taught at home literally to sacrifice yourself to protect your brothers.
Mhm. And I honestly don't know where I got it from. I just think it just came naturally, I just made sure that they were okay.
Yeah, you were the oldest. That often happens, wanting to protect the younger ones. um so so your mom was working a lot. Was she able to be very present with you guys? I mean,
Um,
between meetings and field service and work and, you know, all of that, was she able to actually spend much time with you guys? And did she know everything that was going on?
yeah, she had time. She did know about, his drug addiction, but she didn't know he physically abused me until, a few years before I got disfellowshipped. So
Mm.
it was all kind of new to the whole family that knew, because no one knew because I didn't talk about it, and um, I was pretty good at hiding the bruises or the cuts on my back. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I mean, it's just another layer of abuse on top of the spiritual abuse, the mental and emotional abuse of the
Mhm.
witnesses. To add this into the mix, it's also very confusing for many, and probably yourself as well, to have your, I guess in your case, your stepdad be one way at home and be someone totally different at the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah, it was hard for a while, but then as I got older, I kind of shifted my own way into my own life outside the hall and becoming a different person inside the hall. So I think I kind of developed that at an early age to where it was a lot easier for me to get away with things when I was older.
Well, yeah, if you think about it, your entire life, even from a very young age, was very split between quote worldly dad, Jehovah's Witness mom, and stepdad. I mean, you had different lives that you were living already, and as I've always said, our um, what do they say? Your second life, your double life. Yeah, that's the term. Your double life. That's really more who you are, or who you're at least trying to figure out. It's experimentation as you're trying to figure out who you are, because you're not this other thing that they're trying to force upon you. And so, yeah, it would make sense that you would have to do that. You're already taught to hide things and such, from the abuse at home. Um, so did you go to school? Did you go to regular public school, or were you homeschooled, or what was the situation there?
I was in public school until I was about 16, and then I dropped out of high school and went into um, an adult high school where adults can go and finish high school if they didn't or get their GED. So I did that, and it was a lot easier because I could go in whenever I wanted, stay however I wanted, and I just finished my credits through packets or a course online. So it made graduating high school a lot easier.
And was that your choice, or was that so you could, were you pressured to do that so that you would be away from worldly association or something like that?
I did it because I was struggling in high school. I had just lost my dad at 15. Um,
Mm.
so that kind of took a big toll on me. So I told my mom I wasn't going to school anymore. And so I dropped out of high school, and she thought, for a while I didn't do anything until she made me do homeschooling on the computer. But that was too easy to not do because, you can always create another tab and do whatever you want online and not finish schoolwork. So then we came up with a solution to where I just work on my credits in a different building.
Gotcha. Um, and we'll get into kind of the timeline of your life. Sorry that you lost your dad at 15. That's really tough too. Um, so what about at the Kingdom Hall? Who were you guys at the Kingdom Hall? I mean, you kind of alluded to it already a little bit, but I mean, were you all the witness family that was always at all the meetings and raising your hand and commenting and always out in service on Saturdays and things like that?
We were. after my stepdad had left us, we were that family because my mom had to keep up this reputation of being a single mom and juggling jobs and being a witness. So she put the pressure on us quite a bit being at meetings. So she would tell us that we had to have at least 3 comments or we needed to introduce ourselves to new people. She always had to keep, herself in good standing. So I wasn't the one to comment because I suffered from a lot of anxiety and I just didn't care to. So during the meeting, she would like pinch me or she'd punch me in the arm and tell me that I had a comment, or she'd force me, or she'd write her own little comment and give it to me. And then, yeah, it was difficult.
Hmm. A different type of control and oh, the pinches. My mom was so proud of her pinches and how she could pinch a kid. I guess that I don't know why that makes a person feel good. Oh, look, I can surreptitiously inflict pain on a child. But my mom was very proud of her ability to do that at the meetings at times.
Yeah, my mom was too. So when it happened to be more regularly, and my brothers got older, we got of age of being more independent, we would always fight who would have to sit by mom, because the further you away, the less that she can pinch you. She just have to give you a dirty smirk or something. So we would always argue who would sit the furthest seat away from my mom because no one wanted her to pinch. No one wants to be pinched.
Well, no, I mean, no one wants dirty looks either, just for being at a meeting. I mean, and not commenting or whatever the case may be. My goodness. Um, so then, all right. So then you're raised in this as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and sounds like there were a lot of seminal moments or events that happened in your life. So can you kind of take us through? I mean, I'll just ask you real quick. When did you get baptized? How old were you?
I was baptized back in um, July of 2013. Um, I actually got baptized with my best friend who we grew up together. It was kind of worked out kind of perfectly because she was a year older than me, and then I came into the hall. And then right after I came into the hall, we had another lady who was pregnant with another girl who was born right after I was. So we were all really close, and we grew up together up until I was disfellowshipped. So me and my best friend actually got baptized together, and we did our questions together to get baptized
Okay,
at the
so
same
you were
time.
what, like 15?
um, Something like that,
If I
14.
if I did the math right in my head
Yeah.
real quick. Okay. So leading up to that time, what was life like? Pre-baptism. It's just you and like I guess I don't know what all happens in your story. So pre-baptism, what's your life like?
Um, I was just, um, I'd go to school and come home. It was more the memories that I have being that young. I don't really have a lot because of being through so many traumatic things. We would move constantly. We moved like once a year, I feel like it was. And it was just, when I look back, I just see my stepdad and me, him being rude or just being mean, and I just would block it all out with something. And that's when I started to um have a double life, whether it was, social media or having friends at school. um that's when it all started because of Robbie. So I guess it was more me having starting a double life, but also pleasing my mom and wanting to get baptized.
So was school then, was that also an escape for you because maybe you had friends there, like you had your friends at the hall were an escape, your dad and the trips were an escape? Did you have a lot of friends at school? Did you fit in there, or were you forced to be very different, and did you feel really different?
I fit in pretty well, but I kind of blocked out the schooling that early age because in my memories, I would always be walking to school or riding the bus crying in the mornings because of being kicked in the head that morning before school, or um, always, being yelled at because I was running late, or being told by Robbie that I was worthless and ugly and that I was no good. So I kind of blocked out those early schooling years.
Wow. So your mom was always at work during all this time?
Most of the time, or she would be dropping off my brother at daycare because he's a little bit younger.
Gotcha. Um, so it sounds like life was pretty much just chaos for you, wasn't it?
It was,
Chaos and abuse.
yeah, a lot of abuse. And um, I remember we had just got home from school, and my mom had told us that she was getting ready to go to work and she would be home really late, and Robbie would be here. And he had was in the kitchen. He just took a handful of pills, and he was wobbly, but my brothers were being chaotic, and he had promised that he would take us to the Blockbuster and get a movie. And so he had driven us in the car to Blockbuster, and we got our movies, but somehow we forgot our movies at Blockbuster after we paid for them. And he took us home, and he passed out and hit a parked car, and we ended up rolling. Um, my youngest brother was in the front seat of the truck, and he flew outside the windshield. Um, I was sitting on, um, what do you call those? Like the big stereos that you have in the car or whatever.
Oh, he just
Um,
had like a box in the back or something?
yes, yeah, I was sitting on that, and none of us were buckled, and that stereo had landed on my chest to where I have what is called a shifted rib cage. So anything that I can do, it can shift, and it can impact my lung, and my lung will inflate 10 times the size. Um, and so me and my brother were passed out in the back, and he had woken up and woke me up, and we crawled outside the back. And my little brother was already in the ambulance, and me and him were getting stabled because no one else knew there was kids in the car, because Robbie was just muttering and no one could talk to him. And so after that car accident, we're all good, we're all still alive. And um, after that car accident, I think that's when it began to change. People started noticing that Robbie was not who they thought he was. Um, I it's My mom also began to think that being with Robbie wasn't the right choice after that car accident, because if it was any worse, I don't know how it could have been worse except us dying. Um, she could have lost all of her babies. So that's when it started to get more chaotic about getting divorced.
Yeah. Um, that should be here's your sign. You should maybe leave. Wow, that's so sad because you all were really put in super dangerous positions, even just even if your mom, and I know your mom was probably a victim of abuse herself in certain ways. And so she probably had her own denial and blind spots there. But it's just, you kids were just innocent and really neglect. It's very neglectful to leave you with somebody who is a drug addict and who, I mean, I don't, he obviously was very much in his addiction, and I have a lot of compassion for people who struggle with that. Um, but he obviously had I mean, it was beyond that. He had a lot of issues, and wow, really just terrorized all of you, didn't he?
Yeah. But after that, and people started seeing who Robbie was and everything, people started treating me and the boys differently. Um, and I'd always hear my friends' parents talking about us, and just saying like we weren't very good influences, or we were just not the people you want to be around because of Robbie. I mean, I don't blame them because they also had young kids, and having kids now, I don't want them, if I knew someone's parent was a drug addict, I wouldn't want my kids to go over there. So
Yeah,
a
but
lot of people
invite the
started to
kids
treat us
over to your
differently.
house.
Yeah, it was a rough time after that car accident.
Yeah, because you got ostracized there. But Jehovah's Witnesses shoot their wounded. They take. I mean, here you are, three little kids. They know that you all are living in a situation that is unhealthy, and they just kind of shun you. I mean, just I use that just to say, I mean, they shunning is in the DNA of Jehovah's Witnesses. There's always this pushing away of people, and instead of saying, "Hey, here are three kids that need some help. How can we help these three kids? Maybe invite them over and befriend them and give them a safe place for a minute." Because it sounds like safety wasn't something you had anywhere. They just ripped away what could have even been a safe place.
Yeah, it definitely was, but I'm not really sure if it was before the car accident or just right after the car accident. The couple who is going to be the main part of my disfellowshipping story, um, actually just moved to Utah, and they decided to go out in service, and they had knocked on our door. And when we answered it, my mom, introduced herself, and we met this couple who ended up taking, they seen us as kids that were struggling with, um, being neglected by my stepdad. So they took us in, and they kind of treated us as one of theirs.
Okay.
So that's where it kind of began, is with that
Okay.
couple that knocked on the door.
So you did find at least somebody who was willing to give you all the time of day and try to be there for you. That's nice. Um, so all of this is leading up to your, your eventual baptism. You got baptized so with your best friend. So so did you have a tight little group of friends there at the Kingdom Hall, even despite maybe being seen a little differently because of your stepdad?
Yeah, we did. We were very close, but we were also very lucky because between our hall and then when it eventually split into a different hall, we had so many young kids. So there were so many children between ages of like 2 and 18. So we were always having a group of friends, whether it was the regular group of friends or just the new kids that came into the hall. And I couldn't tell you how many. There was probably about like 25 kids.
Oh
Like,
wow.
yeah, there was a lot. There's a lot of us.
Um, so did you have good moments with those kids? Even let's say pre-baptism, growing up as little kids, did you all get together and do stuff a lot?
Yeah, we did. We played lots of sports. So we would play, we'd do volleyball in the week, soccer, tag football. We played softball on Sundays. We would go hiking on Saturdays, or we'd go to the lake in the summers and go cliff jumping. Like there was always something to do. There was always a group of kids wanting to do something. And it was kind of easier to fit in because the more kids that they are, the more you realize how many of those kids are living a double life.
Mm, okay. Um, so you saw that a lot then with your friends, that a lot of them were also living a double life?
Oh yeah, like between underage drinking, there was quite a bit of that, but um it was just more they would talk mostly the boys. It was always the boy thing talking about girls at school or um I know one kid had just moved into our hall and he was hanging out with us, and then a new kid came and visited, and he wanted to move to our congregation because there was just so many young kids, and he wanted to, um, you know, progress in being a witness. But then he started hanging out with this kid, and it was always secrets between them, and whispers, and then it was always being like, "Oh, I need to go meet up with this group of girls." And then the guys would all get together and they would talk about girls all the time and the girls at school, but it was never the witness girls they were into. It was always the girls at school.
Understood. Um, so you're seeing all this go on around you. What now? I know your best friend was getting baptized. What was your reason for getting baptized at 15? Was there something that was really or around that time, you said you lost your dad around 15 as well. Did
Mhm.
that all happen around the same time?
It did. I no one really like my mom, you would think my mom would be pressuring me to be baptized at this age, especially because I'm getting older. She obviously did, um, encourage it, but it wasn't forced. So I did it just to get it done and just be, um, a people pleaser,
Sure.
especially towards my mom. Um, and even when I was being an unbaptized publisher, that was all me too. Like I included it. So after I got baptized, 10 months later, my dad died. And when my dad died, um, I can't tell you how many elders came up to me and was like, "That is Satan's test to you. You know, um, your dad died and they're testing you if you would be a witness or how you're going to handle it because he wasn't a witness." And especially that brother that I had mentioned that came to my house with his wife in the beginning, he always put that in my head. He said that Satan's testing you with your dad. And he's, because he was an alcoholic, he's testing you. Like he put that as if it was my fault or that was Satan's reason for um to make me fall short of my being a witness.
So your dad also struggled with alcohol?
Yeah, he was an alcoholic. He was ever since he was 16. The doctors had actually told him before 21 that he would die before the age of 30 because of alcohol. But he was, amazing. He hid the alcohol from me. He didn't let me see it. He didn't let me see that he even smoked a cigarette. He would um, smoke outside when I went to bed, and then I would hear him come in and he would brush his teeth and rinse with mouthwash. And he just made sure I didn't see it. And then when it got too bad, he just stopped my relation with him because he didn't want me to see it. So he was a little bit um, more protective that way because, he didn't want me to see the guy that he really was, but he wanted me to see the guy that he wanted to be.
Understood. Um, so then how do you feel so your elders in the congregation, I really just over time more and more just see how predatory Jehovah's Witnesses are, how they really seize upon opportunities when people are in pain to to insert their own manipulation. And here you are at a very vulnerable moment. You've lost your dad, and they're kind of using that to reinforce the truth, so to speak. um did that work? Did it, I mean, how did that impact you to have them tell you that this was some sort of test?
Um, at first, it was kind of very like it was like pouring salt on an open wound.
Yeah.
It was just they didn't focus at that. I just lost a dad, and they just
Yeah.
made it about them, I guess.
Yeah, like, hey, how are you, Lexi? Is there anything we can do? Can we talk to you? Or maybe, jump in and try to help in some way. Instead, it's just, look at that no good person. This is just a test, and that's horrifying.
Yeah. And it after a little bit, after a few months of, coping with my dad's pass or loss, um, I started to think that, it was just them trying to push something else onto me because when I would go visit my dad's, I didn't do it very often, but when I did, um, they would always tell me that I need to bring the book of Bible stories and make sure I said my prayers. And then I kind of like looked at them at that age and I was like, why would I do that? I'm gonna go celebrate Christmas with my dad, like Santa's gonna get me a new bike. I was so excited. I didn't care about the my book of Bible stories and I didn't care about praying to Jehovah because I never did that when I was a witness. I just and I didn't read the Bible and I didn't do that on my own time. It was just you're ruining this time with my dad.
Yeah, there's not much they can't ruin, is there? I mean, they really put themselves out there and interject themselves into just about anything. Wild to think they're trying to interject themselves into your relationship with your dad. But also fascinating to see that you weren't interested in that at all. So I don't know, Lexi. I don't know how many lives you're up to here, but I think it's more than a double life. I think that you had a lot of different things that you were going through. My goodness. I mean, that is I laugh at how it's just so much, but it's really sad that you're again a small child. You're a kid going through all of this. Kids shouldn't have to go through all of this. This is not healthy. You're being let down by all of the adults around you.
Yeah, and um, they started to see me as a broken thing that they wanted to fix. So when it came to conventions or a talk at the hall that talked about losing a loved one or um, in the paradise, you'll see your loved ones, they would always make it a goal to find me, whether it was at the convention or the hall, and tell me that, God loves me and he has forgiven my dad for his sins and that he will be there. And they always made me feel like, they just kept trying to remind me of what happened. And then they would make it upon them to be like, you should really try doing this, or you should really try looking in the Bible a little bit more because you'll find your comfort there. But in reality, I didn't find my comfort there. And I don't want them to bring it up to me because that talk wasn't directed at me?
Yeah, so you can see that that really wasn't about you. That was more about them being able to feel good about themselves for going and fixing poor broken Lexi than it was about you. Because if it was really about you, they would know that you didn't want that. To be reminded of this every time there's a talk on it and to have them come put it in your face and preach at you about it. Instead, it was about them feeling good because they get to fix you.
Yeah. And then before and even after I was baptized, that same couple, they studied with me and my brother. So the elder would study with my brothers, and then his wife would study with me. But they would always, like if it was a recent talk or a recent magazine that came out about death or something sad, they would make me study it and make me feel like I was suffering. And they made me feel like they kept telling me I was depressed or I was struggling, and they didn't want me to hurt myself because of it. So every time something came out, they would focus their attention on that and just keep poking it as if it wasn't already healed.
Ooh, that's I'm so sorry. That's really rough. That's yikes. Again, it's all about them and them feeling good about saving you, but you weren't asking to be saved. You weren't They're just traumatizing you over and over about this thing and making you feel worse. Um, it's almost like well, I mean, let's face it, in the end, Jehovah's Witnesses sell you the sickness so they can sell you the cure, right? They tell you how defective you are so that they can sell you the cure being, Jesus' death, the paradise, all those things. You need all these things. You didn't know you needed any of these things when you were born, but now we're going to teach you that you need these things and you need these things now so you can see your dad. That's very exploitative.
Hmm. And um, the elder, that same elder, um, we we were really close for a very long time. Me and him and his wife. We would go on vacations together with our families. We would go on camping trips. We were just a very close congregation. We always did everything together. There was always something going on. But then the more that he had mentioned that I was depressed and that I was struggling, he kind of forced me to talk about things that happened in my past. So um, he would talk and talk and talk until I was in tears. And then after that, I kind of felt obligated to tell him that Robbie had abused me. And after that, he immediately called an elders meeting. And after that, they made me go in the back and talk about it. And then right after that, they actually called the cops. Even um, this was a long time after he had left us. So I haven't seen Robbie in many, many years, and I haven't talked to him many, many years, but he still called the cops, even if he was even living in Utah at the time.
So when had Robbie left, or what was the circumstances around that?
I was at a young age. I'm not too sure on the age that he had left, but he moved to Idaho because his mom moved up there and she got remarried, and then his brother eventually followed, so he moved up there because um there was nothing left for him in Utah after everything that went down. So the boys would go and visit, and I felt scared. I didn't want them to go and visit by themselves because I knew what he was capable of. Even when he said that he was sober and he was getting reinstated, because at this time he was disfellowshipped. Um, so I begged my mom for me to go up to Idaho with my brothers. So finally he agreed, and um, that was the scariest time of my life, I think, because when we were up there, he had his own house at this time, and he had a whole table full of alcohol and pills. And he was drugged, and he had put on some cartoons for me and my brothers, and he had called us into the kitchen, and he started to shove alcohol down me and my brother's throats. And he made us take shots, and he was just, and my brother at the time, my youngest brother, I think he was probably 7, maybe 8 at the time. And then I had stopped it when he tried to put a pill down my brother's throat. And so I said we were tired and we were going to go to bed. And he called me, names, and he told me whatever. And he got even worse. So in the middle of the night, not knowing where I was, um, I took my brothers and we left the house, and we walked to his mom's house, my grandma's house, to get away from it. And um, that's what encouraged me to tell that elder what had happened, because Um, no one believed me when we got to my grandma's house. We got there around 2 in the morning, and she woke up, and her husband told um, his brother, and they got and left the house to go get his keys to make sure he wasn't driving. And they had asked him, "Do you know where your kids are?" And he said, "What kids?" And he was, all loopy. And my grandma said that we were just really tired and we needed to go to sleep, and nothing had happened. And the next morning, they had acted like nothing had happened. And Robbie had came to the house for breakfast, and ever since then, everything was normal. And so after that, I had told him because it had traumatized me.
Wow, the denial runs deep, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Nobody wanted to see it. When so you end up telling that elder, and uh kudos to the elders for calling the cops. I mean, that's uh something I think that a lot of people wish they would do, or make proper reports to proper authorities, instead of acting like they are the arbiters of everything, as and not protecting the general public from people because they keep everything in house. So they called the cops. Did anything happen?
Um, we did have an officer come to the house. They had contacted my mom. She was at work. Um, and everyone was infuriated because this is when it blew up. This is when everyone found out that I was abused. So then again, everyone treated me as if I was a broken child because no one knew. And this elder had taken upon him to come to my house after the sheriff stopped by and took a report. And he convinced my mom I was going to kill myself. And I was crying because I wasn't ready for this cop to show up at my house and talk about it, and I wasn't ready to tell my mom. And so everything kind of rushed, and I wasn't ready. So I left the house crying, and I went to get in the car, and he yelled at my mom, and he's like, "You need to stop your daughter because she is going to kill herself. She's going to run her car off a hill. She's going to run into a different car." And I turned around and I told him, I was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Instead of comforting me, or, you could share the scripture. I'd like that a lot more than you telling my mom I was going to kill myself." And then after I had left, he told my mom that I needed to be medicated. And so after that, my mom got me on medications for depression. And then he had told her I needed therapy. So again, she put me in therapy.
What kind of therapy?
Um,
Jehovah's Witness counselor or
no, it was my mom
okay.
didn't want that. So she put me in a different counseling session, but I ended up not after the first meeting, I didn't go. So my mom told me I didn't have to after that. So
Um, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Gaslight. It is literally a movie from like the 40s or 50s. It's an old black and white movie. You can actually watch it on YouTube for free. Actually, to anyone listening, I would recommend this really. But there's an old movie called Gaslight, and it's really where the term gaslighting comes from. And I think that I'd highly recommend it as a watch because I think you might see. I mean, this is all gaslighting. They're trying to make you feel certain ways. They're playing mind games with you. It's all manipulative, trying to make you feel a certain way so that if they can make you feel broken, then they can control your reality. And apparently, they were fairly effective at it to some degree. Though at least internally, it sounds like you were fighting back.
I
That's
was,
horrible.
it was awful. And that's when my double life increased to lessen
Sure.
me of a witness and more of a person outside the hall, because after seeing that side of him and him convincing my mom after a few words that I was suicidal, that um, I was done. After that, I was 100% done, because before then I was struggling whether or not I wanted to be in or not. I was more on you know, I didn't know which side I wanted to be on. And after that, he made up my mind. And that wasn't the first time he convinced my mom I was suicidal.
So I guess what then did this double life look like? What was the escape that you were finding?
I had made friends at work, obviously, and I started to hang out a lot more with those outside of the hall, and I found comfort in alcohol. I wasn't drinking constantly, but I did like the feeling when I did. But I didn't make it to where I needed it constantly, because I seen the struggles between my dad and my stepdad. So I didn't take it that far, but some nights I did go that far. So I did find myself comforting and partying and just being with people that didn't understand me or didn't know who I was.
Did anybody know who you were?
No.
I mean, anywhere in this process, has anyone known who you are? Or and honestly, I should say, has anyone cared to know who you are? They're too busy putting upon you who they want you to be or what they think you should be. It's not about who you actually are.
Yeah, and you definitely realize that after you were disfellowshipped, because like I said in the beginning, the congregation that I was in seen me as a child, and they see me grow up, and they were still there when I got disfellowshipped. But the fact, when I was disfellowshipped or was going through that hard time, no one, s- you know, spoke up at this time when I was struggling. They didn't tell me that Satan was testing me again. They just gave up after that. They did, they see me actually struggling, but they didn't want to help unless they were causing the struggling.
They didn't want to help unless they were causing the struggling. I think that's a good way of putting it. They were creating all of this, and then trying to quote help you again, always was something that would benefit them or get you on the path that they wanted you to be on. Even if it was, hey, let's heavily medicate her in some way to make her more docile so she will do what we want, or whatever the case is. I mean, my goodness, this is terrible. Uh I guess you start living this double life. You said you were working, so did you start working like maybe when you were 16 or something like that?
I started working when I was 16. Right after I got my license, my mom encouraged me to get a job, because I was had so much free time after school.
Mm.
So I got a job working at an assisted living center, and that was my one of my favorite jobs because I loved the older people, and I really cared for them because I didn't have family that came and visited them. A lot of them said that they just got dumped there and their families don't come. So, and I didn't feel like I had family either. So I kind of made them my family.
I could see how that you would be drawn to do so. And so where do you go from there? You're starting to live this double life. This elder is all up in your business, uh, creating your business in very unhealthy ways. Your mom is going along with it. So where do you go?
After that, um, I started, I told you that I was partying and drinking. It started to increase, and I started not wanting to hang out with the congregation kids or the families that wanted to do things. We had went to a family fun center one night, and I told my mom that I wasn't feeling good, and I really wasn't feeling good. But the couple that we were with and their kids had invited us over for game night, and I told my mom I didn't want to go and I just wanted to go home. And of course, she hated that, because we are a family. We need to do things together, especially when it comes to Christian things. And so I went home, but I had remembered my friend from work that was new, invited me to a house party, even though I wasn't feeling good, but I had already bailed on her a few times because I didn't have um, time or I didn't have the perfect excuse to leave my house. But this time I did because my mom wasn't there. And if I just thought if I beat her home, no one would know. Um, I tried to beat her home, and I got pulled over and I ended up getting a DUI at 18. So he, took me back to the police station and breathalyzed me, and he said that I blew a 1.4, which I don't believe at this point because I didn't, I only was there for an hour. I didn't drink that much. And but then again, I was under the influence, so I guess I can't really say things like that, but I was in jail, and my mom came home and she was frantic because I wasn't home and I wasn't answering my phone because obviously they took my phone. And they didn't give me a call until a few hours later. I was booked, and they gave me a phone, and I tried calling anyone else but my mom. I tried calling different elders because I did not want my mom, because I knew how she was. So finally, I called my mom after not getting answers from any of the elders, and she was furiated. She, you know, was so angry. She called her sister. They came and picked me up, bailed me out, and um, my mom was yelling at me as we were leaving the police station. And I had stopped her in her tracks, and I said, "Above all, I was like, I'm drinking, but above all, I also have a tattoo. Just to put it out there now that you know, because I was hiding a tattoo." And she just stopped talking after that. That made her shut up because she realized that I wasn't who she wanted me to be. But the whole time my aunt was cheering for me because she's also shunned. So, she wasn't in it either. So this whole time she was quiet, but she was really excited that I was, you know, wanting to be out of it. So that's where um, the part of my disfellowship started.
So, I think that it's also appropriate. Another good thing you just, or a thing that you just said that's kind of poignant, is that you told your mom who you were and she just shut up. You told her that you had this tattoo as well. And I mean, isn't that, that's so indicative, that's shunning, right? We tell Jehovah's Witnesses who we are in some, by whether it's by a behavior or it's, I just don't believe this anymore, or whatever the case may be. And suddenly we get hit with being shut up, or they shut up. They don't want to talk to us anymore, because that again is just the next step in gaslighting, to weaponize relationships and to withhold love or affection to try to control somebody. And so it sounds like, I mean, that's very apropos of what Jehovah's Witnesses do, for her to have done so in that moment. So you said that was kind of like the beginning of your disfellowshipping. I mean, did your mom turn you into the elders, or what happened from there?
Um, actually, one of the elders' wives seen my picture in the blotter, and she called my mom. So no one had knew until she found my picture in the blotter. And that elder, we were close to that family. So my mom met up with the elders and she had let me sleep. She left me home and she would just let me sleep and heal from the night before. And she had told the elders herself that I had got a DUI and, whatever. And she came home and we talked and she says, you need to apologize to your brothers because they were worried about you. And then she sat me down and she says, you need to be prepared to be disfellowshipped. You need to get in your head what's going to go on, and then she started saying, you're not going to have friends, you're not going to have family, you're not going to have the life that you had before. And, it kind of shocked me because I was like, this isn't the way I wanted to go down. I didn't want to do it because I did something wrong on both sides. So I started to cry because I thought my mom, was just going to abandon me. But then after we had talked, I went to my room and I thought about it and I said, maybe this is my chance, maybe I don't have to, you know, I'm 18, so I'm legally adult. I can leave, I can do what I want now. But then my mom had created a time for the elders to come to my house instead of me going to the Kingdom Hall for an elders meeting. So they came to my house and my mom and my brothers left the house because, they can't be there. And we had talked, and then they sent me to the other room while they talked. And when I came back, they didn't disfellowship me. They just privately reproved me. And I was so angry because I thought this was my time to be disfellowshipped. And they're like, just see you. You have so much potential. We can work through this and we can just, you just can't give talks, but you can still go out in service and we can really help you with that. And, everyone else was happy, like my family, but I wasn't happy because I thought I was going to get disfellowship that night.
Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shunned swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like exjwhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest. So, so what do you do when you're wanting to be disfellowshipped and you don't?
I started to act out a lot more. You know, I was angry.
Makes sense.
I wanted, I wanted my own life again. You know, I was happy on who I was and the people I was with, and I just wanted to be my own person. And yet they entrapped me again. They made me feel like they can fix me because I had one little mess up, and they said that I had a really good track record in the hall, and that they didn't see disfellowshipping would help me at this time.
Ooh. Once again, you are their project.
Mhm.
You are their object to be fixed. You are not a human being. You are the thing that is there that is broken and needs to be fixed. And who better to fix you than them, right?
Exactly.
Wow, so full of themselves. So so I'm not, I mean, and just so you know, I mean, psychologically all of this is very classic, the acting out and everything. Of course you would act out. Actually, it's not surprising that you went down the path of drinking and escaping into alcohol. It's what you saw, right, your whole life. That's what people did. I mean, it's may even be a certain predisposition there. So like, yeah, this is just, you're just a hurting person in a bad place who can't find their way out.
Yeah. And after, when we were in the meeting, what had pissed me off the most is that they had brought up Robbie. And at this point, I was 18 and I haven't seen him again for years. And I haven't heard from him from years because he wasn't my dad. He had no obligation to talk to me. And so they had brought him up and said that, we know that you've been struggling with the past of thoughts of Robbie and being physically abused. And I had looked at them and I questioned them. I said, "What does that have to do with anything?" And I said, "What if I was just drinking to have fun? Like, why do I have to escape from anything?" And they looked back at me and one of the elders said, "Because you are struggling and you are depressed. And so you turned to alcohol because you are depressed of thinking of Robbie." And then again, I had mentioned, I said, "I don't think of Robbie." I said, "This has nothing to do with Robbie." And an elder had mentioned the scripture and he read from the Bible and he said that, um, this is all because of Robbie. And he's like, "You're not getting this fellowship because of Robbie because you are a struggling child."
So
So
you
it was an
see,
argument.
even when they're trying to be compassionate, which they probably were, it's still in service of this thing that they are in service to, this machine of Jehovah's Witnesses, that honestly was probably one of the bigger problems in your life as well. And I mean, really, I don't know. Was there anywhere in your life where you ever felt safe or that wasn't a problem? I mean, it seems like everything was kind of abusive.
Yeah, I didn't feel safe until I was out completely.
Yeah.
And, I've never felt safer than I do now. So it was just a hard time.
Yeah. Oh, well, of course it is. So, so you end up acting out after not being disfellowshipped. So, what happens after that?
Not too long after, that I got my DOI, Robbie had passed away. He, you know, was in the drug world down in California and he simply passed away. We don't really know the reason why, um, but we do, but I kind of, I'm just not going to mention that. So, everything stopped focusing on my DOI and the struggling of losing another dad. Everyone all of a sudden wanted to make this picture that I had lost another dad, Robbie, because he's the one that raised me. And so they had a new reason why to fix me because I had lost another dad.
So another potential vulnerability they can exploit um, for their own purposes. What did they try to do? I mean, just what was it that they how did they use it against you, I guess? I mean, just more of the same conversations, and you're depressed and you're suicidal and we need to, you know, get you to talk to somebody, or some medication, or what was it for them?
This time it actually went a different route. They encouraged me to go out and service more. They invited me a lot more places. They wanted me to feel included because I was not only a fatherless child, but twice as that because I lost two dads. So they made their children feel bad that I had lost another dad. And, the boys already had sympathetic from everyone. They didn't treat them as if they did me, but they started to include me more. And um, so they kind of reversed it. They wanted me to feel a part instead of feeling like I was a depressed child.
And so, including you, did that encourage you to dive back into being a witness? Or, what was the impact of that?
Um, my mom wanted me to because she seen that I was getting more invited to congregation events. So I did go out and service a little bit more, but I did not participate. Um, I let everyone else do it. I just show up and I'd offer to drive or um, I'd always leave early because I got sick in the afternoons. Not really, but I just don't want to finish out the day. But then I decided to pioneer that I was going to be this pioneer and I was going to make everyone happy and maybe they'll jump off my back. So again, me and my best friend, the one that got baptized together, we pioneered together and we went to pioneer school together. And when they gave you the pioneer book, you have to study it so much. And um, I didn't. I just did not want to. And I would just fly by like I did everything else. And I just pull something out of my head and make a comment every now and then. And the elder that was mentioned previously before, him and his wife actually helped me study the book a little bit, not really go into the book because they weren't supposed to, because they're not supposed to look at it if they're not going to pioneer school. But they just gave me some tips on to studying that book. But the pressure became a lot more from my mom when I was pioneering. And that was the biggest mistake when I realized I shouldn't have done it.
And what that pressure look like, from your mom?
So I was working a full-time job and what you have to get 70 hours a month in pioneering, I think, or whatever.
Mhm.
And so I would go out on service, but she didn't think I was doing enough. I didn't have enough return calls or Bible studies, but realistically, I didn't have any because I just made it up because I thought it would look better on the time card that I had things. So she would actually, she would yell at me every day and she told me I was worthless and I shouldn't have been a pioneer because I wasn't worthy of being a pioneer because I wasn't um, going out on service enough or I wasn't applying myself enough. And so she made it a lot harder to go out on service because after seeing that and hearing that every day, that doesn't make you want to do it.
Yeah, that's rough. Wow, there really just was no safe space for you. I mean, even when you're trying to do, again, it gets back to the common refrain of the ex-JW is, I could never be good enough. And here you are, and all right, I'll give you what you want. I'll do what you want, and it's still not enough.
hmm So, like, I had told the elder and his wife, the ones that we were studying with, I had told them what my mom was doing, and then she was just making it really hard. And this was like the very beginning of being a pioneer. So this was like maybe a month or two in, and he had told me that I can work really hard 1 month, so like I can gather up 90 hours, and then put 20 of those hours the next month. So I didn't have to directly get 70 hours a month. I just have to
Right.
meet the criteria at the end. So I did that because we were going on a vacation in a few months, and I was stacking up on hours 1 month, and then that way I could still be caught up on it. And she still didn't, it wasn't good enough for her because I wasn't being the pioneer that she wanted me to be.
I wonder if you weren't being the pioneer that she wanted to be.
She wanted me to be
Well, no,
the
what I mean is,
other.
did she want to be a pioneer, and she would have done it a certain way if she could have pioneered? So she was kind of doing so through you vicariously.
No, she just wanted me to be like everyone else, like the other
Uh,
girls that were pioneering.
gotcha. Just
She had
comparison.
no interest in being a pioneer or anything like that. She just wanted me to look good for her when it came to the hall.
Wow. Just all about appearances.
Hmm.
Gotcha.
Yep. But I had, I racked up those hours so easily because we um, had a lot of opportunities to do so. So I would do early morning witnessing where you stalk people in the parking lot, which was really awkward and terrifying. And I hated it because I don't like people talking to me when I'm trying to do things. And then I'd go and meet with the service group, and I'd go until 3, 4 o'clock. And then I'd do night witnessing. So we would stay up until midnight or even later than that because we had all the hotels that were up. So we'd go to the hotels, the gas stations. Um, Sometimes we would have late night calls from people who would work um, really early in the mornings or whatever, and so we would reach those guys. And so I really did try. Like I tried my best to please my mom, and it still just wasn't enough.
No, it's never enough in Jehovah's organization for anybody. So, you're realizing that you're doing this for nothing in the end, or at least that you're not accomplishing what you had set out to accomplish, aren't you?
Hmm. And they had called us, so we were so blessed because at this time, they were allowing first year pioneers to go to pioneer school. So me and my friend, um, we got to go to Vegas for our pioneer school, and they she had the book was filled with sticky notes and highlighting and all that, and she had looked at my book and it was empty, like it had never been opened before. And she said, "Where's your notes?" And I said, "It's all in my head," because that was the easiest thing for me. And she's like, "Well, I guess everyone has their things to do or whatever." And so when it came to pioneer schooling, when we would go, that elder was actually the teacher in my pioneer school because he made himself the teacher. Like he knew that I was going to the school, so he made himself the teacher in this pioneer school, so he'd be there.
How does that? I don't even know how that works. That's wild. He made it. He got himself appointed to, or whatever, to the position of teacher at that pioneer school just because you were there.
Yeah, and he had put me right in the front row. So it was just, he had his eye on me, he just wanted me, he just thought I was his daughter. He always mentioned that because my best friend called him dad because they were really close. And he had pulled me aside one day and was like, I am like your dad, but you don't have to call me dad if you don't want me to. So yeah, he really tried to be a dad.
Uh, I mean, whereas certainly it can be nice to, was it the scripture they used to use, be the father to the fatherless boys or whatever. Um, he's just creepy. That's not that he's like, it's honestly almost obsessive and stalker material to some degree. The way, I mean, obviously, everything or a lot of what he's doing is abusive in and of itself. Just interjecting himself into your life in all these ways is very like, but he thinks he's doing something good. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I found out he was inappropriate in some way. Well, he's already being inappropriate, but I think you know what I mean. because that's way over the top. Uh, so where'd you go?
Um,
How'd it go
you
for you?
know, it was okay with the Pioneer School. Like I said, I just ripped things out of my head and I commented because he told me that I have to participate, like you can't just sit there. It's Pioneer School, you have to participate in everything. So I took it upon my hands to participate in breakfast. I had asked one of the sisters to grab donuts in the morning, specifically jelly filled, and I had her replace the jelly with mayonnaise. And I specifically saved those ones for him. And that's the only thing I could do. It's not like I can go up and smack the guy or something. I was just so furiated with him. So he ate my mayonnaise filled donut that morning. And that was enough for me at that time.
Lexi finds a little power in the situation. Did he say anything, or did he just sit there and eat them and act like everything was normal?
At first, he did take a few bites of the donut because he couldn't realize what was wrong. And then he finally realized that he was eating mayonnaise. And he knew exactly when it was me. Like he like looked at me and he's like, Lexi. And everyone was laughing because everyone knew that donut had mayonnaise in it. And after then, after that moment, I just started pranking him a lot more. Like I just made his life so inconvenient because that's the only thing I could have done. I just made his life inconvenient.
And you did all of this during Pioneer School, or just in other ways outside of post Pioneer School?
I did it afterwards too. This had kind of made our relationship a little bit better, like we kind of we were getting along and I didn't hate him because for some reason I was having fun pranking him all these time. And then he all of a sudden I had quit my job. I was a preschool teacher for quite a few years. Um and I had quit because I just wasn't getting paid enough. So he started a business, a tiling business, and he told me I could be his apprentice and he'd pay me, a lot better and we can go on jobs together. But so I took him up on his offer because he said that he would leave me time. I could take any days I wanted off without um no one telling me no. So I could leave town if I wanted to, if I had an emergency. Um, I didn't have to worry about those days off. So to me, I thought it was a good idea.
Okay, so how'd it go?
It was pretty good for a little bit. I learned how to do tiling and concrete, and um, we had a really big job that had to do with concrete because the people who did the foundation of the housing wasn't leveled. So we had to re-level the bathroom with concrete. So um, by myself, I made my own concrete with, sand and lime and all that mixer. And I made 2,000 pounds of concrete in 1 week by myself. And I rolled it in and out. And I was working really hard. And all of a sudden, it stopped. The work just stopped. He didn't want me to do anything. He made me organize tile. Like if I find an ugly piece of tile, I had to put it away. So I just, I didn't care anymore. And I started to get really sick at this time. And um, I started to lose a lot of weight for some reason. I just wasn't, um, my body wasn't working. So in the beginning of the week, I was 164. And then a week later, I weighed 120. I had lost so much weight within that week. I wasn't eating anything. I really couldn't do anything. So finally, he had taken me to the doctor and, well, he recommended the doctor and he had met me there because my mom couldn't. So he met me at the doctor's office and he prescribed me some medications to stabilize my body and just make it calm. That way, they can figure out what was wrong with me at that time. And I had to go get some blood work done. And he told me the next day, he's like, take the rest of the day off, but tomorrow meet me at this job site. I will get you started. And then I have to go run an errand, but I'll be back to help you. So he had left me one of those premium smoothies, like the old people smoothies. and he told me to drink
Oh,
it.
like one of those, yeah, with the vitamins and minerals and such in it.
Yeah. So he had left me one of
Sure.
those, and he's like, "Make sure, the doctor said you had to take this pill with food," and I wasn't, I couldn't eat. So I tried a little bit, but I took the pill and I didn't drink the smoothie, and all of a sudden I collapsed. I had passed out at the job site. I had woke up and I had called him, and he was rushing to me, and he had got me in the truck. He had to carry me because I couldn't see. I couldn't feel my hands or feet. Um, I was in a lot of pain, and he had told my mom to meet me at the house. So she rushed to the house, and I had stopped breathing on the couch. And so they took me to the ER, and it turns out I was allergic to the medication, and it gave me heart attack like symptoms. So I basically had a heart attack without the heart part.
Okay.
And um, so my mom and a couple, like him and his wife, came to the ER room with me, and they were all sitting there. And they had discharged me, and I had to, just go home while they figure out what was wrong with me. They tested my heart, they tested my lungs, my brain, everything. They couldn't find anything. So we went home and I rested, and he pulled my mom aside and said that I tried to kill myself. I tried to take the whole pill of bottles. And he convinced my mom I was, again, suicidal because he found the opportunity to tell my mom I was suicidal again.
Um, Not really sure what to say to that. I mean, he is very obviously very obsessed with you and suicide, and convincing your mom that this is how it is.
Yeah. So
Goodness.
um, when I was trying to feel better and I started to gain a little bit more weight and I was able to eat a little bit more, um, my mom had pulled me aside because we were arguing because she had found out that I was talking to guys online, or, not online, but with, Snapchat and all that stuff. And so she got really upset with me and she said, "Is this because you're trying to kill yourself?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "He had told me that you try to take the whole bottle of pills." And I grabbed the pill bottle because I still had it. And I said, "Do you want to read this pill bottle for me?" And she read it, and it was zero point 0.5 milligrams because the doctor didn't want to prescribe me too much of a prescription with my body weight and the way that I was losing weight. And so he wanted me to start off low and then gradually go up. But for some reason, that zero point 0.5 milligrams shut my body down. And I had told her the count of the pill. And I said, "Look, I only had taken a half of that pill. I didn't take the full pill because I didn't want to because of Robbie. I can't really take pills because of Robbie because I seen what it could do to him." And she looked dumbfounded. She looked at me with big eyes, and she didn't want to say sorry because she didn't want to be wrong. And she just left the room.
Because heaven forbid she be wrong.
Yeah. And so, after that, she kind of still blamed me for everything. She didn't blame the elder for convincing her that I was suicidal and that I needed help. And after that, it was about a year later, I was disfellowshipped because I was out of control again.
What does that mean?
So, um, my husband now, me and him were dating around this time. And surprisingly, I don't know what made him do this, but the elder had told me that there was this guy that he knew that needed help on a job in California, a tiling job. And he had seen my work and he wanted me to go help him. So for some reason, he let me fly and travel with this guy that was not a witness, but he knew the guy, so it was okay. And so I took the job, and I was gone for, I don't know if it was like a week, maybe less than a week. I flew down to Oakland, California, and I did this job, and it was really fun. And um, the first day we had lunch, and the guy came up to me and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna go get lunch. So if you want to finish up, we'll meet you in the truck." So I said, "Okay." And we got in the truck and, he had told me, he said he had told me that you struggle with eating. And I said, "I don't struggle with eating. I just was really sick at the time and I just couldn't eat. I wanted to eat. I was hungry. My body wouldn't accept food." And so he's like, "Well, he told me that I had to make you eat and make sure you were okay and make sure that you weren't depressed and make sure you were safe." So he deliberately gave me a handicapped hotel room because he didn't want me to, for some reason hurt myself because, handicapped hotel rooms don't have a bathtub and they have certain things that can help you. And yeah. So
You need to
he
watch the movie Gaslight. My God, this guy's pulling out every bit of this. I mean, he is controlling the way outside people see you. He is trying to control the way people on the inside see you. He's trying to control the way you see you. My goodness. Wow. Trying to really warp your reality and warp it for everyone around you. Um, yeah. So you got to actually have a real conversation then, I guess, with this gentleman and tell him, hey, what you've been told about me is not necessarily factual.
I did, and he um kind of understood it because he worked with them and he kind of see the guy that he was. And but I felt a lot comfortable with him because I kind of told him about my double life and how I was talking to this guy that is now my husband. And um he really made me feel a lot better of what I was doing. Like, he made me feel like I was on the right track. And, he didn't know about the witnesses at all, because he's not a witness, but he was like the first non witness to actually understand me. And it helped me a lot.
Yeah. I mean, what did it feel like to be seen and heard and validated even once in your life?
It was, it felt really good because at that moment I felt like I could leave and I didn't have to worry about anything. Um, I can be opened up to, my boyfriend and tell him what was going on. And shortly after that, I was disfellowshipped.
And so were you disfellowshipped because you had a boyfriend?
Um, so before, so jumping back a few years, I had told this elder um, that I had sex. And so I thought maybe this will start getting the ball rolling again. They have to disfellowship me with sex because, that's the thing that they did. But I told the wrong elder. He took it upon himself and punished me himself. And he said, "We don't have to tell anyone about this as long as you're repentant and you pray to Jehovah." So he didn't punish me and I just left it at that. So he knew that I was sleeping around and I was doing things I shouldn't have been doing at the time. And, um, but he didn't want me to be disfellowship because he knew he couldn't be my dad.
So, wow. Yeah, he was truly living in his own fantasy world and trying to get you in it. Uh, so then he had not disfellowshipped you, or he had known that you were sexually active before and you were not disfellowshipped. So now you have a boyfriend, and why did you get disfellowshipped?
So,
Like, did he decide this is the time, or did you let other elders know or something, or maybe there was something else to it?
um, it was actually another brother in the hall that I was really close with. But I'll get to that in just a second. After this trip that, I had flown back, and when I started to work with this brother again, he still didn't let me do anything. And I just didn't like sitting around for 8, 12 hours a day, like that's not who I am. And so I found another job and I told him I was quitting. And in front of the job site that we were working on, there were so many people there. Um, he was yelling at me. I told him that I needed something different. I missed working with kids. I wanted to go back. and be a teacher again. That's what I wanted to do. And he was so angry. He started yelling at me and he was like, "You're suicidal. You're going to kill yourself if you don't work with me. You're going to hurt yourself. You're so depressed. You don't know what you're thinking. You're incapable of thinking for yourself." So I turned around and I got in my car and I left.
Wow. You're incapable of thinking for yourself. The very definition of gaslighting, pretty much. So okay, so you left that job and now what's the next snapshot?
So I left that job and that's when our relationship had ended. Like I didn't talk to him or his wife anymore. He was texting me long messages about how I was ruining my life and all that. And before this point, he was the type of person to um, fill up my car with gas. Like he'd paid for gas in my car because I'd travel all around town. So he'd fill up my car. Um, he made sure I had, emergency stuff. Like if I ran out of oil, I had oil in my trunk or windshield fluid. And um, he checked my tires all the time. He left me gifts. But as soon as that had happened, it had ended. So I thought maybe this would be my, like it'd be easier to leave. Um, None of my family knew what had happened at this point, and so I moved on and I got a new job, and, I started hanging out with my boyfriend a lot more, and, after one meeting, I was struggling a lot, like, with just memories in my head, and I didn't know what to do, so I turned to this brother that I was really close to, and he invited me to his house, after, um, what was it? Sunday meeting? It was a Sunday meeting, he invited me. And my brother found out I was going to his house and my cousin, he was like, "Oh, we wanna tag along." So they came with me and, we were all having fun at this night and, they loved to go get snacks, so it was me and his wife that were at the house, so we, were playing with their daughter, and then when they got back, things got pretty serious, like, I told them I needed to tell them something. And so the room got quiet and I told them that at a party, I was raped, and it was really bothering me. And I just told them that I didn't really have anyone to talk to because, um, I was like, "I know if someone knew this, I was gonna get in trouble," because I thought it was my fault. And, so they all reassured me that everything was gonna be okay. And then a few weeks later, I was called in the back room. And after meeting, I was called and I went back there and, the elders jumped me. They were like, "So we have been hearing that you've been struggling." And I said, "Struggling with what?" And they said that I was an alcoholic and I was turning to drugs and I was sleeping around. And I said, "What?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they said that someone had told them that I was drinking, that they see me take drugs, and that I was sleeping around. And I said, "Well, if I was going to take drugs, why would I do it in public? Like that would be a secret thing to do." And then another brother, the other elder, had mentioned that I was raped. And so I knew exactly who was saying it. And they wanted me to tell everything. They asked me inappropriate questions about the rape. They asked me, was I, did I say yes or was I enjoying it? They had asked me if, um, like, did he, you know, forcefully do it or was it soft? They just asked too many inappropriate questions and I was really uncomfortable. And so I had lied. I told them, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "Well, we've been hearing things and we have some people who, confirm the story." And I said, "Who? I need to know who confirmed it." And they said that, "Well, we can't really tell you this information at this time." And so we ended the meeting and I left and I called my brother because, he knew what was going on and he was with my cousin. So that was perfect timing. And I had asked if they had told anyone what I had said, and they said no. So obviously, it was that brother who said anything because the next meeting on Tuesday, he didn't talk to me. He didn't look at me. So I knew it was him for a fact. And um, the elders kept blowing up my phone. They wanted to speak with me. Um, they needed to get answers. So I ignored them for a while because it was none of their business whether if I was raped or if I was drinking or something, it wasn't their
Sure.
business. And um, so, I started work at my new job. I worked about um, 45 minutes away. I worked right outside of Zion's National Park, so I was pretty far away. And I worked crazy hours. I worked a shifting schedule, so I'd have every other weekend off. I worked um, every other Tuesday and Wednesday, so obviously I every other week I would work on meeting nights. And on if I did work a weekend, I'd work from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. So, and I didn't get home till almost midnight. So there was kind of like no chance for me making a meeting on Sundays. So when I started missing meetings and I was hanging out with my boyfriend on my free time, someone had told my mom that I was with a boy. And my mom had well, I was at his house, we were watching a movie, and my brother's ex-girlfriend had called me and said, "Hey, your mom's looking for you. She keeps calling everyone, asking if you're with them." So then I left his house and I went home, and she's like, "Who were you with?" And I said, I was with these girls that were from the congregation. And she's like, "No, you weren't, because I called their house and I went to one of their houses and you weren't there." So then I obviously, it came clean. I was like, "Well, I was with this boy." And then she blew up and she kicked me out of the house. And the next day I was out of the house. And she didn't believe it. She didn't, she threatened many times before to kick me out or ship me off to my dad at the time. And this time when I did move out, she realized that I was no longer, I wasn't in it anymore because I wasn't going to meetings. And if I took it seriously enough to move out, then, I was done.
So, she just threw you out. Where'd you go? I mean, if you're not planning on that, it's hard to have somewhere to go. What did you do?
It was actually perfect timing because one of my friends from work, she's been begging me to, room with her. So one of her friends had an opening for 2 rooms, but we ended up having to share a room until one of the other girls had moved out. So, um, it was about like a week or so we shared a room, and then I got my own room. So it kind of worked out perfectly that um I had somewhere to go. And she came to my house and she got all my stuff, and my mom put on her poker face and was all happy to meet my friend, and she said, she was all happy. And then when I left, we didn't talk for a couple weeks, and our relationship kind of was a lot more dead than it was before. And at this point, I wasn't going to meetings still, and I wasn't going out in service. And the elders were blowing up my phone, calling me, texting me, and I was at work and I wasn't allowed to have my phone, so I wasn't responding. And my mom had told me I needed to go to meeting so I can meet with them, and I did. I went to a meeting. I skipped work and went to a meeting, and they pulled me in the back room again. And this time, they forgot about the rape. They forgot about the alcohol and the drinking, whatever. And they had mentioned my husband. They were like, "So, who is this boy?" And I said, "What?" I was caught in my tracks. I didn't know what they were going to bring up. And they're like, "Someone had seen you park outside his house." Like, how did they know it was his house? And they said, and we found out where he works, that he used to live in Nevada, but he recently moved to southern Utah. Um, he drove this big old white truck. They found out what truck he drove, his license plate number, found out who he was, first and last name. They found out, we were hanging out, but I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone I was with him. And I was really, when I went to his house, I'd park on the opposite side of the street, or I'd park at a neighbor's house. So they didn't really know what house I was going into, but they did. And turns out that elder that I quit was stalking me because I seen his truck go right past the house, and he was parked outside for a long time. And I watched him, and everywhere I went, his truck was right behind me.
Yep.
So he started it and he told the elders, but I didn't want to tell them who I knew who it was. So I asked them who it was, and they were like, "Oh, again, we can't tell you who it is unless they want to be known." And I said, "Okay." So they're like, "Oh, we'll ask this person though." And um I finally had answered one of their calls, and he said that this person didn't want to be known, but they do know what's going on, and they have a lot of information and they have a lot of proof. And so again, I lied. You know, I told him that was my friend's house. I was just over there helping them move, and it was actually his grandparents' house. So I said that I was visiting an older couple, and everything that I was saying at this point was just an utter lie because I didn't. It was none of their business what I was doing, and it was, I didn't want them to know. And then they brought up the rape again. So I lied and I said, "Oh, well, it just happened. I went to go pick up a puppy and they just abused me." And they were confused and I didn't tell them because I didn't like the questions they were asking because they get really invasive when you're in there by yourself.
Mhm. Well, they shouldn't be asking about it at all. I mean, it's none of their business.
Yeah,
Just
it
by,
was
in other words, by
awkward.
virtue of asking questions, it's already abusive.
Yeah, so I was crying and I didn't want them to know because it was humiliating. Being raped isn't something you post, you don't post about it, you don't talk about it all the
Sure.
time. And I didn't want anyone to know. And then the elders took it upon themselves to tell my family everything that was going on. So my family was asking about my husband and if I was raped, and they asked of me if my story was true. And I told my grandma on my way to work, she says that story about you picking up a puppy was stupid. And I said, well, it was none of their business what had happened. And so I had told her what had happened, the truth. And I said it was none of their business. They don't need to know my business unless I need them to know. And I said, what are they going to do about it? They can't fix it. They can't do anything about it. You know, they can't undo it for me. So why would I have to tell them? They're not my parents. They're not my family. They don't need to know.
Yeah, and they've already used literally everything bad that has ever happened in your life to get at you. Like everything that happens, right? I mean, any death or whatever, they use it as a means to get at you.
Yeah. So it was just, awful. And it was a hard time. And my mom had, you know, invited, we sat in the living room with my two brothers and we talked about whether or not I was going to get disfellowshipped. And she's like, well, this is your choice. You need to decide what you want to do. Like, if you don't want to be in the truth anymore, then you don't be in the truth anymore. But if you want to, then you need to fix it. And I just told her I didn't know what I wanted to do because everything that I wanted to tell her personally keeps getting told by other people. I wanted to tell her about my boyfriend. I wanted to tell her when the time was right that I was raped, because no mom wants to hear that from somebody else. And so I had left the house and I went to one service. I went out on service one time because I was like, if I need to know if I need to fix this, then I need to know if I am uncomfortable going out on service still. So I created a group with some younger um, kids, and we went out, and it was like right after a CO visit. So you know how the CO always encourages you to do new things. So he um, wanted us to take a picture of our like publications that we were doing and like send it around or whatever. And so everyone had this big group message. Um, every car group had pictures of them and their publications. And I made a joke. I was like, maybe we should not do publications and we should just skip service, go out to eat, and take a picture with our menus. And we ended up doing that. um, before we did that, they made me get out by myself and go do the last store on the territory because you know how like territories can be weird where like the house is right on the corner and it was all by itself. So not everyone needs to get out of the car. So they volunteered me to get out of the car. And it was the first time I've really been alone going to a door, and I didn't like it. Like I knew that I should have just stayed home at this point. So I knocked on the door and this man had opened it and he's like, "Oh, you're one of them." And I said, "I'm so sorry to bug you this early in the morning. Um, you're not what I think I am. I'm not here to reach down your throat about my Bible. And he like looked at me and he's like, "Well, are you selling something?" I said, "No, but if you could just sit here and act like we're talking for just 1 minute, I will, I'd really appreciate that," because I was like, "I'm really in an uncomfortable situation right now." And he's like, "Are you okay? Like, are you in danger?" And I said, "No." I was like, I'm not religious. And I just realized that I don't want to do this anymore. And he looked at me. He's like, "Well, if you want to come in, we can act like we're having a Bible study." And I said, "That probably won't look appropriate if I walk in by myself." And he's like laughing, and he ended up taking the publication I had in my hand. And he's like, "I will take this." And he's like, "But if you ever need to come to my house and do this again," he's like, "you're always welcome to come to my house." And then we like, said our goodbyes, and I went in the car and I told him I had a return visit, and that was it. And we ended our service day with that. And I knew after that that I was done. Like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't preach to someone that I didn't believe, and I don't want to be that hypocrite.
Good for you. Also good for him. Wow. He did you a solid there. I mean, wow, he really uh what a way to end that.
So after that, I my mom had told me I needed to make this meeting, but I had already told my cousin I had to pick her up after work. So I told her that I can make at least half the meeting before I go pick her up. So I went to meeting. I was there late because I was just a late person. I sit down, and one of the elders, after the prayer had been said, they started getting into the meeting. One of the brothers stood up, came to our aisle, and tapped my mom on the shoulder. And he said, "I need to talk to Lexi." And so she like tapped me. I was on the far side of the seat. They got my attention, and I stood up, and they took me in the back room and had an elders meeting during meeting because they couldn't catch me anywhere else. I was answering my phone. I wouldn't talk to them. So they caught me most vulnerable in the middle of meeting. So everyone knew what was going on at this point.
Yeah, they're making an
And
example.
yeah, it was really embarrassing. You don't want to be, they usually do meetings after a lot of people had already left, and they make it seem like, oh, it's not bad. They seem enjoyable. So no one thinks anything. But, at this point, everyone knew something bad had happened. And so they took me in the back room, and they tried to talk to me one more time, and I didn't give them anything. I didn't give them what they wanted. And it's been the same elders ever since I got my DOI, the same group of elders all my life. And um, one elder was the dad of the brother that I had told I was raped. So he was there, he watched me grow up. Another elder did my baptism questions. And the last elder, I babysat his kids. I taught his son how to swim. And, I was really close to his family. And all of a sudden, their view of me of being this broken child had seemed that I was a delinquent. I was going off the edge really bad. I was an alcoholic, a drug addict, a sex addict. I was doing all these things. And they said that, we could fix this if you wanted to. And I started crying, and I said, "I don't want to fix it." And they're like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Give me paper. I'm done." And I signed off. I wrote on that paper that Um, I said my full name, and I don't recognize as one of Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. So I did it myself. And the elder that I used to babysit his kids looked at me and he says, "I know you don't want to do this. I can see it because you're crying." And I had looked at them and I said, "I'm crying because you guys are disrespectful and you guys don't care." And I said, "You guys only want it your way. And I'm done. I don't want to be a part of this." Obviously, people started treating me differently. They turned the shoulders on me, because they all knew I was an alcoholic and a drug addict when I wasn't. I was just working. And they all looked at me and I said, "I'm done." So I got up and I walked out of the room. My mom was crying, and I grabbed my stuff and I walked out of the hall. And another brother chased me out, and he had grabbed me, and he had put his arm around me and his other arm on my other arm. And he's like, "Don't let Satan do this to you. Just because you're a sinner, don't let your relationship with Jehovah end because you're a sinner." And I shoved him off and I said, "Screw you." And I walked off and I got in my car and I left.
That's it's an intense way for that to all go out. I mean, from the meeting during the meeting. I mean, I'm like, picturing in my head, sitting in the audience, seeing these brothers walk back and get you, just the way they made that a spectacle, the way then they're making a spectacle, this brother like running after you and like grabbing you and such. That's it's all just so over the top, and it's all about them, isn't it? I mean, all of this was always about them.
It has been, and I it took me a lot longer than I wanted it to, and they really made my life a living hell. They kept poking at me, making me feel things and, bringing up things that I didn't want to talk about, or, they just made me feel guilty because I didn't want to go to Bethel. I didn't want to be this super pioneer lady, and I didn't want to comment. I didn't want to give talks, and I didn't want to go out in service. But then, there's some people who go to meeting every now and then. They do what they want, but they don't get bothered by the elders. And so it's like they pick and choose who they want to bother, who they want to destroy their life with.
Well, sure. And sadly, you got picked uh, because of whatever reasons that they wanted. I mean, they end up abusing everyone in their own way. The whole thing is abusive. It's all spiritual abuse. It's all mental and emotional abuse. But uh, obviously, you got some people there who got really obsessed with you in a lot of really unhealthy and abusive ways. Sorry again, from your mom to just everyone was letting you down at every turn.
It was, and you really see the people who were behind you because the people who I grew up with, they didn't take a second thought about turning their shoulder on me. They knew who I was, but they obviously had a different idea of who I was because as soon as they heard a rumor, they couldn't turn their shoulder fast enough towards me. And I didn't had talked to them, but they were fine when I wasn't disfellowshipped and I just got privately reproved after my DOI. I showed off my tattoo. Everyone knew about my tattoo and I was drinking, and they knew that I wasn't a virgin, but they all treat me, the same as if I was a part of them. But as soon as that rumor came up from an elder, they turned their shoulder and they gave up on me. So I gave up on them.
Well, sure. At the end of the day, they're Jehovah's Witnesses, and this is what Jehovah's Witnesses do. This is who Jehovah's Witnesses are. And when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. Jehovah's Witnesses are all about control. It's not about real love. They don't love anybody who's different than them. They only love people that they think who will be at least a prospect of a future Jehovah's Witness at the least.
Yeah. But after that, I was happy. I got to be the person who I am today, and I made a family who accepts me for who I am, and I don't have to hide myself. And I'm still discovering who I am because there's so much trauma to that. But I'm not afraid of being, showing off with who I am, like the tattoos I have on my arm or the piercings that I have, or I'm not afraid to get a beer at dinner, because someone's always watching me, apparently because I was stalked by for a long time. And, now I realize that I don't like being around people and having them know my business. Like I'm a very private person now. I don't go out a lot and I don't talk to a lot of people because of what they did.
Sure. So how long have you been out today now as outside? When were you disfellowshipped, or and I guess did you ever go back, or were you disfellowshipped and you just bolted?
It's been about 2.5 years.
Okay.
When I moved from Southern Utah to Nevada, I was working with my mother-in-law at a hotel that she ran. So I was working the front desk and I had worked a late night because she didn't have anyone to cover it. So I worked from 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. So it was kind of like the night shift. And my mom had messaged me and she said, here's the Zoom link to the meeting. And this is, during Corona. So I was like, I I was like, I want to click it. I want to know what they're doing now, especially over Zoom. So I watched, the beginning half of the meeting, and I said, "Man, this is the stupid crap. They're still doing the stupid crap. I've heard this talk 10 times already. I didn't like it, so I shut it off and I was done. I never went back. I've never clicked the Zoom link. I did talk to an elder. Um, I don't think I talked to him over the phone for very long. It was just a brief second. He just confirmed that I was in Ely and that I was still disfellowshipped and I had no reason to come back. I didn't have the idea of coming back. So I just told him that, yeah, I'm in Ely and um, I don't desire to coming back. But he did send me the Zoom link just in case, but that was it. And I never turned back.
Um, it's kind of weird that they're even confirming you're in Ely. Like, what business is it of theirs? You move wherever you want. You're not one of them anymore, and it's none of their business.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know.
I mean, that's stalker behavior in and of itself. You don't need to know where I am. You don't need me on your rolls or anything else. You just go away. So so after being disfellowshipped, I mean, did your family shun you as well? Your brothers, your mom, did everybody kind of, I know you had kind of talked about your friends already, but were you shunned fully by your family too?
I was for a long time. And then I had called my mom, telling her that I was pregnant.
Mm.
And she was like, oh, she wasn't happy for me or whatever. And then I ended up miscarrying. And then shortly after that, I did get pregnant with my son. And I told her again. And again, she wasn't happy, but I just wanted her to know before she found out from somebody else. And then we gradually started talking again a little bit. And then I told her that I was in labor because I had to be induced. And she came down for the birth of my son. And after that, because of my son, she has been in my life, but she doesn't force being a witness. She doesn't tell me to go to meetings anymore. She doesn't tell me to read the publications anymore, or read my Bible, or pray. So she's strictly here to be part of my son's life. And me and my husband has talked about it for a long time. It's always getting brought up. But as soon as they decide that they don't want to be a part of my life anymore, then that's it. They don't get to be part of my son's life. And then I got pregnant with my second son, and my grandma, her mom, started to come around a little bit more. So they kind of talked to me. I did see them because I go visit my grandparents that are not in the truth. But I had to stop in Salt Lake. So I stopped to see my mom and so she can see my boys again. And my grandparents came over and my grandpa came over, and I didn't think, he would even come into the house because he's a very strict man, like, very into the religion. But he talked to my husband, introduced himself, and um, had a good time or whatever. He got to meet my son. And then just recently, I stopped by their campsite to see my mom again so she can see my son, and I got to see my brother, and my grandpa actually was a part of my conversation, and none of them um, brought up being in the religion, didn't ask if I was coming back, didn't ask if I was attending meetings, didn't do anything. So as of right now, we do talk every now and then, but I'm not going to let them come in and out. So if they want to be in, they're in, and if they're going to be out, they're out.
Well, and I think one of the things that you said there that struck me and I think is true is, I mean, they came back in your life because you had kids.
Hmm.
And so always the warning of, how much they're around your kids or what access they have, because again, they love you as long as they think that you might be coming back, or maybe you have progeny that they think that they might be able to use. And as someone who works with a lot of people behind the scenes in my coaching practice and in these interviews and such, I know people, unfortunately, who don't even have their kids at this point because of the way Jehovah's Witnesses can warp things. So this is always, to know that there's a danger there. Anytime you have your kids around Jehovah's Witnesses, if you all can somehow have some sort of a healthy relationship, uh, which would be somewhat surprising because it's hard to have healthy people in cults aren't healthy by default. But if you guys can make something work and it can be healthy, I mean, hey, enjoy what you can have, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really optimistic about it, like, oh, my mom's gonna be in my life all the time, we're gonna have that relationship. It's more of just um formal. It's a very formal. We have very short conversations still because I'm not gonna give her that full relationship because what she's done, and we're still healing from that. But I also have that thought that she is going to be that person again when she wants to be, and she wants to be a witness 100%. And then tomorrow she'll be 25%, and then she won't be in my life 100. So I'm not guaranteed that. So I'm very short with her. She can come see my kids if she wants to, but they cannot mention the Bible, they cannot mention
Yeah, you got to
witnessing, they
protect your
can't do that.
kids.
I have very strict boundaries about my children.
Yeah, you got to, because I mean, again, Jehovah's Witnesses don't respect boundaries, and people find messages through back channels on Facebook to the kids, or through I've known people who their witness family was talking to them through games. People have found literature in kids' rooms. It's one of those things you got to watch out for. But I mean, it sounds like you know this is who they are, and that you are trying to protect everybody.
Yeah. The one time my grandma had mentioned, um, with my first son being really little, she says, you can always play the kingdom melodies, because they're so peaceful, and they have just cute, the band playing. You don't have to listen to them sing. And then after she said that, I realized when I was humming, I was singing one of the kingdom melodies from one of the kids. And I was like, gosh, damn it. I was like, why does she have to do that to me? Like I was all of a sudden humming this song. And now we have, after that, my boundaries have got more firm. Like, I'm not going to do that. They'll listen to any song that I want them to, but that.
Yeah. But don't you see, like anything they can find, they're always trying to get their hooks in, because it only
Mhm.
takes one. And then they start making people feel certain ways, back to the predatory nature of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, Heck, we went to a circus a couple weeks ago, and they were parked out there in front of the freaking circus and with a cart, trying to pick off kids and parents who came through there. It's just they're out there, they're looking, they got their own stalker behavior. But so I don't know what about today? So the people who do shun you today, I guess, do you have anything that you would say to them?
Not really. Like, I left it how it is. I don't really have anything to say because I'd probably just go off on them, honestly. I don't have the strength to tell them anything because I don't have the time. I don't want to. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't care about them. Um, they can live their life. I live my life, and that's it.
Sure. Anything that you found in your path, after being one of Jehovah's Witnesses? It's one thing to leave it, because maybe we just realize it doesn't fit who we are or who we want to be. But I mean, is there anything that has helped you in the waking process, as far as realizing that, hey, maybe this isn't and never was the truth? Or is there been anything that's helped you in your journey since leaving?
Definitely my aunt. I had mentioned her before in my story, the one that came and picked me up from jail. She has been my like rock. She's helped me anything. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. So if I have to tell her something, she's not going to sugarcoat it. She's going to tell me how it is. And she's really, she's helped me a lot. And she always directs me, she introduced me to this podcast and other forms of um, people who have been disfellowshipped, or the shows that have came on about like the cult of being a witness. There's been some documentaries on it.
Mhm.
So I watched that, and um, she really does help me, and I probably wouldn't have done it without her.
Well, shout out to your aunt. That's awesome, that you had. I mean, I think we could all use somebody supportive when we leave, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's a very lonely process, and they create it that way for a reason. We've all been isolated. Um, since you've been out, are there any lessons you've learned or anything that really stand out to you?
Um, just I guess the one thing that I take away from it is just how humble I have became, and how, you know, kind I have been towards other people, because realizing how they treated me is not how I want to treat other people, or how, I don't judge someone, because they say they don't judge people, but they do. They judge people all the time. And so they really taught me how to be humble and stand my own ground.
Ah, good for you. So what do you like about your new life since you've left? And do you have anything
Everything.
that you're aspiring to or whatever? I mean, what do you enjoy about being Lexi today?
Um, just everything, honestly. Just I get to be who I want to be, and I don't have to be afraid to show off who I am with my tattoos, or, my holiday spirits, especially with my children. I'm not gonna pray from them having that special magical moment like my dad gave me. I'm gonna make it magical for them, but I'm not gonna hide it. And I just, I don't know. My life is pretty great without the witnesses being up my butt all the time.
I think that's the perfect way to end it. My life is pretty great without the witnesses being up my butt all the time. Well, Lex, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'm so sorry that you had to go through so much to get here, but I'm glad, I think you said you were 24. Uh, you've got a long life ahead of you. You've got, your own kids and husband today. And let's just look forward to the beautiful life you guys can have together.
Me too. Thank you for having me. It's been really nice to share my story and finding people who understand it.